skip that last one.
So these slides were prepared before I had a lot of my information ready. So some of it's not in the slides, and I'm just going to speak to some things here. Hey, it worked. Okay. Just as an overview, we'll talk about some changes since we last got together, what we're doing with the registries, some of the relevant IATF work that we're doing, and a little bit about DNSSEC, not very much. Since the last meeting, we've launched our new IANA website. If you go to it, it should be a lot more easy to navigate. And if by any chance you find links that don't work, please let us know. We think we caught everything, but transitions are hard, and we may have missed a few. We've enabled IPv6 transport for web, DNS, and mail. The IPv4 registry format has been updated. We've tried to make it more clear what things are unallocated, excuse me, which things are unallocated, which things are actually reserved for specific purposes, and which have been allocated and to whom. The IPv4 registry XML sample has been published, and I'll be giving the URL for that later in the talk. And the AS number registry actually has been updated since this slide was prepared. This slide is also out of date. Since we prepared the slide a week ago, we've now allocated 2 more /8s, and so there are now only 39 free /8s. The XML sample format, as you can see up there, that's the URL. The idea here of switching all of our registries to XML, converting them to XML, is to give us a lot more flexibility in how we prepare the data and feed it out to people. So we get a lot of requests for preparing the registries in different formats, and this will allow us to either say, here's the raw data yourself, go do it, or yes, we're willing to support that kind of presentation. And here's where I'm going to talk about the unallocated but used address space. I don't have slides for this. Dwayne Wessels, who did the work on this, is going to be presenting at OARC later today, and we'll make his results available in a more public way pretty much as soon as we get the report written. Basically, you see different results depending on what it is you're measuring, whether you're measuring the number of messages, the number of clients, or the number of addresses from the unallocated blocks. And one of the interesting things is that there are 5 net blocks that occur no matter in the top 10, no matter how you do this measurement. And they're net 1, net 100, 175, 176, and 180. Net 1's obvious, 100 is also kind of obvious, but the other ones are kind of interesting in that we would not have predicted those particular ones. So as I say, we'll be publishing these results soon, and you'll be able to find them, find a report on our website, I'd say within the next week. The AS number registry has been updated to reflect ERX, which was the redistribution of attribution for responsibility for different AS numbers to the RIRs. So it used to be that everything was listed as being supported by AARON, when in fact they may have been distributed by RIPE or APNIC or one of the other RIRs, all the old legacy allocations. And the RIRs went through a process of updating all that information, trying to make it more accurate, and we've now reflected that in our database as well. For the IETF work that we're engaged in, RFC 3330 BIS, this is to update the assignment of Net 14 to the X25 networks. There's also a few other specifics in that RFC that we'd like to update at the same time. So we have a draft 01 ready, and draft 02 is probably going to be completed by the end of this weekend, and then we'll be ready to push it forward. This new draft Cotton V4 MCAST guidelines, is because we found that the multicast assignment guidelines are a little too vague and unclear. And the experts that we use to evaluate these requests have asked for additional guidance, a little more clarity, and we're trying to get that through as quickly as possible. This is my DNSSEC part of the update. IANA was asked early this year to prepare some kind of DS key registry until such time as the root zone is signed. And that's still an ongoing discussion as to whether it will be signed, who will do the signing, who's going to hold which keys, all of that. And so we proposed to the ICANN board that IANA be authorized to create what we are calling an interim trust anchor repository for TLDs. It's only for TLDs. We will use the same authentication methods that we use for name server changes, for instance. So a DS record will require the same authentication as an NS record. And the board essentially approved this at their last time before last meeting. We're going to retire the service 60 days after the root is signed. So once we have the signing done, we're going to set an end-of-life date for the registry. We're not going to archive it. We're simply going to take it offline at that point. We don't want it to be an alternative resource for DS records. Initially, it's going to be a distinctive service, and by that we mean you're going to have to send in requests for it separately. Longer term, it's going to be folded into our automation project, and it'll just become another record that people can update through the automated root zone tool. And that's it. Thank you. Any questions? Great.
Sorry, I was a bit slow to come to the microphone. I have an update to your, the IETF work slide. There's also draft cotton TSVWG IANA ports, which is a planned update for how you get a port for TCP and UDP. So people might want to read that. It's a working group item in TSVWG now, even though it's still named draft cotton.
Yeah, and we're putting that one through, we're going to put the multicast one through the working group as well, but that one we asked to have originated in the working group. Again, it has to do with questions that have come up as we've evaluated port requests and distinctions between system ports versus user ports and whether you should assign both the UDP port at the same time. So it's a kind of arcane problem, and yet it affects pretty directly how we allocate this finite resource, and that's why we're paying so much attention to it. So good question. Thanks.